There I was, being a regular kid until I was 9. And one weekend, we went to the Hayden Planetarium, right here in New York City. And, right, it's just another museum until they turn out the lights and the stars come out. Back then, space shows were live, and so there's this voice. We are now in the universe, and here are the stars. You're looking up, you don't see anybody, you just hear this voice. So it's like the universe is talking to me. And there was a sky unlike that which I've ever seen, having been born and raised in New York. And there you are, immersed, bathed in the cosmos. And that can be quite influential on a 9-year-old, as it was on me. It's as though you were locked in a room your whole life and then somebody opens a window to a universe, to the universe. 2 years later, my parents bought me my first telescope. Then I saw the sky as sort of the universe had intended it to be seen, bringing the moon to me as never before. That was it. I was hooked. From then on, I wanted to be an astrophysicist. What's fun about telescopes is that if you've never looked through one, and then you look through one for the first time at the moon or at Saturn, it is astonishing. Saturn has rings. Oh my gosh, the moon has craters. Things you've heard about and read about, but to experience them yourself becomes a singular moment in your life. You are there in the universe, and you can't get enough of it. From then to this day, when I look up at the night sky from spectacular vistas, mountaintops, middle of the ocean, I look up, and when I see the night sky, I say, that reminds me of the Hayden Planetarium. In fact, looking back on it, I would say, that weekend, the universe called me. There I was, being a regular kid until I was 9. And one weekend, we went to the Hayden Planetarium, right here in New York City. And, right, it's just another museum until they turn out the lights and the stars come out. Back then, space shows were live, and so there's this voice.
Good morning and welcome to STEM Pro Live. My name's Lori King and I'm from Makisa, and I'm really excited that you are able to join with us today. STEM Pro Live is a program that we put together at Makisa to help you kids see what people in the STEM professional fields are doing to solve problems. So there's a lot of people in the world right now trying to solve a lot of really important problems. And we want you to see what they do every day and how they got where they are, because you know what? we need a lot more people because we have a lot more problems. And one of our problems that we are looking at today is we have a whole lot of people in this world and not quite enough resources to cover all of the people. And so we have great scientists out there doing some really great work in the field of sustainability. And one of my favorite scientists in the field of sustainability is my friend Jared Stoltzfus, who built this tiny house to show us how we can all live a more sustainable life. And Jared is here today, and he is going to show you his tiny house and talk to you about how he became a scientist and how you could become a scientist like him and do the important work that Jared's doing. So Jared?
All right.
Good morning, Jared.
Good morning. Thank you.
There you go. A couple hundred kids there for you to talk to.
All right, great. My name is Jared Stoltzfus, and I am a PhD student in the School of Sustainability at Arizona State University. Sustainability might be a word that's not familiar to you all, but we're mostly concerned about taking care of people and taking care of the planet. Environmentalism is great, but if people are suffering, we really need to take care of them as well. And we're not only concerned about people now, making sure my needs are met and your needs are met, but we want to do it in such a way that even your kids and your grandkids will be able to have a great earth to live on as well. A little bit of how I got to where I am today. I think I always liked sciences. I like nature. I like to know how things work. And in middle school, I had a teacher that really made science pretty fun. He had his electric guitar in class to teach about sound waves. He brought in lasers and fog machines so we could learn angles and cool stuff like that. So I ended up being a biology major in college. Again, I like animals, I like plants, I like nature, so I liked studying biology. And then after college, I went down to Guatemala for a few months. Guatemala is down in Central America, and you guys probably know where that is. And I lived in a small town up in the mountains, and it was a beautiful, beautiful place, but there were a lot of problems down there. Drinking the water out of the tap could make you sick. A lot of people didn't have a good place to cook. They had an open fire in the middle of the floor, and so their rooms would fill with smoke. It would make them sick. Young kids would accidentally fall into it and get burned. And so I started thinking, like, how can I use my love of science to solve some of these problems? And what kind of school can I go to learn how to do that? And that's where I found the School of Sustainability, and that's where I am now. And as part of my studies, I was with a team of students that built this tiny house because there's a lot of things that are really easy to understand, like reduce, reuse, recycle. You guys have probably all heard that. But some of the more complex things like energy efficiency and payback periods and solar power and water conservation, these are harder concepts to understand when you can't actually see them. And so the team of students I was with decided to build this thing so we can actually see these difficult concepts in action. So why don't we go on inside? So a tiny house is exactly what it sounds like. It's a very small house. You might not have noticed the wheels that this is on, but we built this house on top of an 8-foot by 16-foot trailer. So you guys could probably measure out a space in your classroom that's 8 by 16, and that's how big this house is. But it's still a house. It has a bathroom, a kitchen, a bedroom, little living room here, a little dining room table. And one of the important things about tiny houses is making good use of your space. So underneath my stairs here, I've got some storage space, a tiny little closet to hang clothes. But yeah, this tiny house is unique because we designed it to showcase sustainability concepts. And one of the ways we did that is by using reclaimed materials. So things that might have been thrown away. This is an old door, and I turned it into a sliding door. This old countertop, or actually this is another old door that I turned into a countertop just by drilling some holes and it needs a little more work to make it look nice, but it works as it is. The entire tiny house is built out of this thing, and this is called a SIP, a structural insulated panel. So there's 2 pieces of plywood on the outside, and the inside is all styrofoam. Now you guys know when you hold a styrofoam cup that it either keeps what's inside cold or hot, depending on what it is. If it's hot chocolate, it's going to keep it hot. If it's a drink from Circle K, it's going to keep it cold. Now imagine if that cup were 3.5 inches thick and the size of this trailer with a giant styrofoam lid on top. You know, it's going to be very well insulated, so even on a hot day, it'll stay cool inside. There's a small window air conditioner. You guys have probably seen those before, but that little thing will keep this entire tiny house really cold, even on really hot days. One day it was 110 degrees out and we had it down to 65 in here. And that doesn't use very much electricity. Now, and when it gets cold out this winter, as cold as it ever gets in Arizona, a couple candles and body heat in here will be enough to keep it warm. You know, and if you use your little hot plate over here to make a pot of tea or whatever, that'll warm the place up too. So this is very energy efficient, and on top of being energy efficient, it's actually going to be making its own electricity. But I'll get to that in just a little bit. To complete the tour, there's not a whole lot to the kitchen, but it's enough to do some basic cooking. Little mini fridge over here underneath. And the mini fridge is Energy Star because that means that it's going to use less electricity. On through this sliding door here, we've got the shower on one side and a composting toilet on the other side. Now, a composting toilet uses no water, and that's really important in this tiny house because there's only a 35-gallon tank of water underneath. So if I was flushing 3 or 4 times a day, that would use up my water really fast, and it would also mean I would have to have a really big tank underneath that would store all that stuff when I flushed it, and then I'd have to haul that somewhere to an approved dumping site, and that's just a lot of work. So this composting toilet takes my number 2 and turns it into plant food. When it fills up, I can simply remove it and dig a hole and bury it next to one of my trees. And the tree gets a little fertilizer and I get to take care of that mess. In the shower, I have a low flow shower head, and it also has an on and off switch. So I can get wet, turn it off, soap and shampoo and all that, and then turn it on again to rinse off. That again is going to save a lot of water. And the shower and sink both drain to 5-gallon buckets underneath. I didn't want to have another big tank that I'd have to haul somewhere and empty. So water that goes down our sinks and showers is called gray water, and it just has a little bit of soap, a little bit of maybe a little bit of food scraps in it, and that's okay. Like, you can use that to water your plants, water your trees, water your grass, and the grass will be healthy. Now, if I have a little bit of extra food scraps or my apple peel or my apple core or banana peel, I have a worm composting bin under here. So worms do a really good job of eating food waste. So my old tea bag here. Now if we dig through this, we will find worms. There's one. There's lots of worms in here, and this turns my food waste into more plant food. And it doesn't even stink. I know you guys can't tell that, but it doesn't smell. It actually smells a little bit like dirt and coffee, because that's a lot of what's in there. If we go up the steps, there's a queen bed up above us. So that's why the ceiling's a little bit low in here. But there's a queen bed up there, and enough room for some clothes and an alarm clock and other things that you might need. But it's not necessarily a space that you want to spend a whole lot of time. But most people that live in tiny houses, you know, they have a small house because they don't want to be home all the time. They go to the park, they go to the library, they go out in the community and that's where they want to spend most of their time. So this makes a great guest room at my house. I don't live in here, but it's parked in my driveway. It makes a great guest room. We have family visiting over Christmas from Indiana that are going to be staying in here, and when we don't have company, we're going to list it on Airbnb. So it's like a little hotel in the driveway for other people that are visiting in town. Now there's a couple other features that I want to show you here, but to do that we're going to have to go outside. So we'll go on out and let's see, the first thing we're going to look at is the solar panel here. Now I had 5 solar panels donated to this project by Sun Valley Solar Solutions. Thank you guys. And this is one of the solar panels that will go up on the roof. I have 5 panels, and that's enough to produce all the electricity that we need for the cooking, the air conditioner, the lights. All the lights are LED, and so they only use a very little bit of electricity, like 3 to 5 watts instead of a 60-watt light bulb. So it doesn't use much electricity. Solar panels cover everything. Now you guys know that these only work when the sun is shining. So they have to produce enough during the day to get through the night as well. And so they will charge some batteries that are sitting in, I'm gonna move our whole camera setup over here. The batteries are gonna be sitting in this old truck box that I got from Craigslist. So again, taking something old and finding a new way to use it. The batteries will sit in here. That charges all night, and it's enough power for the entire place. Another thing we have over here is the on-demand hot water heater. So it's not hooked up yet, but this uses a propane tank to heat the water only when I turn on the faucet. So most people have a large hot water heater in their house, maybe 50-gallon tank that is constantly kept at a hot temperature. So even when you're away at school all day, it's cooking away. Even when you're asleep at night, it's using a lot of energy to keep that water hot. So instead, this only heats up water when I turn on the hot water faucet. So again, I'm saving a lot of energy and saving a lot of space too, because this is the whole thing right there. I think that's it for the major features of the tiny house. But just one more thing about sustainability and how to get there. Like we mentioned, the reduce, reuse, recycle, some of these things here. But another concept of the tiny house movement is that we just don't need so much stuff. There's a website called The Story of Stuff, and I encourage all you teachers to check that out. It's got a really good video that explains how things are made and then what happens to them afterwards. And with a lot of our stuff, we use it a little bit and then we throw it away. And so when you have a very small space, you don't fill it with so much stuff. So if I was living in here, I wouldn't go shopping very often except for groceries. And these are all things that we can do to be more sustainable, reduce our environmental footprint, and it's cheap to do it this way too. That's sort of the other big tiny house thing, is that you know, I could build this brand new, maybe with fewer features. I could build it for less than $10,000 if I didn't have solar, didn't have some of those other things. There's a city in Minnesota that is building these things for their homeless people, and then yeah, so it's really cheap to build, and it provides shelter and just the basic necessities. Other uses for tiny houses are, you know, a guest room for your house, or if you have some land up in the mountains, this makes a great little cabin. Yeah, I'm not sure what else to say about that, so I'm excited to hear your questions and start answering those.
We do have questions, Jared, from the chat room, and so I'm going to ask the first one that is a little bit more about water. You talked about the tank, but how does the water get into the tank?
Right. So the tank is actually mounted underneath here, and to fill it, you've got to have an outside source. So while it's here, I can run a hose over here and fill that tank. Now, if I was up in the mountains somewhere, 35-gallon tank is not going to be enough. I would probably want like a giant 500-gallon tank, and even then you would have to bring out a truck full of water. Or if you have enough rain, you can make the your gutters on your house drain into that tank. That's rainwater catching. So you could do that for your water supply. But the important thing is, if you're not connected to a water supply, you have to use it very sparingly. But if you were catching your rainwater, you wouldn't want to drink that necessarily. But you could use it for washing dishes and taking showers and that kind of stuff. Hope that answers that question.
Great. So a good question we got is, why do you live like this?
Why do I live like this? Well, I don't live in here. I'm married and I have 2 young kids, and this would be a little bit tight for us. But I live, I try to live very sustainably. I do have solar panels on my house. I have some chickens in the backyard, and that's where we get our eggs. I've got the worm composting inside too. And I live this way because I am concerned about the planet. There's a lot of pollution, and that ends up hurting us ultimately. You've probably seen the movie The Lorax, and that's sort of what this story is about. You know, the environment got so bad that, you know, they were paying for clean air. And so I want the world to be a healthy place, not just for me, but for my kids and their kids too.
So Jared, we had a classroom ask, what about bigger families? How can they live like this? And I think you talked a little bit about how you live, but could you go into a little bit more about how bigger families can live like this?
Sure. So this tiny house was built very energy efficient and saving water and saving energy and using reclaimed materials. In fact, even the SIPs were kept out of a landfill. There was a green building event in Las Vegas, and they built the entire side of a house to show how these things work. They were going to throw it all away. And so we drove our trailer, this trailer that the whole thing's mounted on, we drove that up to Vegas, collected everything and brought it back and built this. Now this is a tiny house, but you could use these same ideas to build any size house. You could build an entire apartment complex out of SIPs. They could all be energy efficient, water saving, all those different things. And especially with big families, the less you buy, the more you save. And so big families can take those hints in as well.
So how long did it take you to build it, and how much did it cost total?
Okay. We were all students. None of us really had any experience doing anything like this. I had done some construction during college, but we started design, we collected all the materials, and we built it between February and May of this year. And that was only on Saturdays, but there were probably 6 to 8 people most Saturdays helping out. There's been a lot of little finishing work that I've been doing on my own since I finished, but we also got a lot of materials donated. The siding was donated, the solar panels were donated. We did a Kickstarter campaign to raise money and raised almost $4,000. But the total cost, if nothing had been donated, is somewhere around $16,000. Which is also still very cheap compared to, you know, that you might spend $16,000 a year on rent. So this is still pretty cheap.
Jared, how many people do you think could live in that tiny house?
Well, it depends on how you like to live. How many could live in there? There's the queen bed upstairs, easily for 2 people. The little sofa in there does fold out, so that could be a kid's bed. But I think if there were 3 people in there, 3 might get a little tight. You would want to spend a lot of time out of the house, which is a good thing to do anyway. More time at the park, more time at the library. But you know, the kitchen isn't big enough to really make big meals. You could do 3 simple meals a day, but I think 2 could live pretty comfortably. 3 would be pushing it.
Do you get electricity from anywhere else other than the solar panels?
Well, the solar panels are not yet installed, and so right now you can see this little extension cord, this orange extension cord is powering the whole thing right now. But as soon as the solar panels are installed, this will get connected to an inverter that takes the solar power and turns it into power for the house.
We had a great question about applying this in Central America. Do you think something like this could be applied in Central America?
Yeah, and actually we met with a couple different organizations that were looking for better housing options. So right now in the world there's a lot of refugees, both because of war and because of environmental problems. Down in Haiti, they still haven't finished rebuilding from the earthquake several years ago. There's still a lot of people living in tents. And, you know, tents get really cold at night and really hot during the day. So, you know, a small village of tiny houses would be way better than their current conditions. So, I mean, we think that's a great use in other countries. Or even, you know, like, this is a great way for us to build here. You know, if your parents are building a house, they're probably going to do it out of 2x4s and then they'll spray some insulation in there. But SIPs are just way better insulation than what most houses have. So not only is this very appropriate for other countries, it's something we should be doing more of here as well.
So how many styrofoam blocks did you use to build a house?
So they don't come in blocks. This whole front porch is just one spare piece. But let's see, the roof was actually one piece. It was incredibly heavy, so we had to cut it to be able to lift it and install it. But that was all one piece. That the back wall was 2 pieces. The front wall, I think, was 2 pieces as well. So SIPs are really cool because you can go to the company that makes these things and say, these are my floor plans for the house. They will custom build them so that all you have to do is put them together. And they go together really quickly. But we made this out of scraps, and so it was a little bit more work. But if we had ordered these things directly from the company, I think they would have given us 5 pieces, and we would have just screwed it together.
So Jared, I think that there's a lot of kids out there trying to figure out how they can get their whole family into a tiny house. And so we had a question about, well, could you just stack them on top of each other and make it bigger? And
yeah, I mean, you could build a couple of these. You could have a little campground where everybody has their own room, and the tiny house is the room. There's actually a hotel, sort of hotel in Oregon, I think, or Washington, and they have 6 or 7 tiny houses, and so everybody has their own space. There's also, you know, if we had a bigger trailer, you could make a tiny house that's 8 feet by 30 feet. And that would be twice as big as this. Or an old shipping container. I've seen those converted into houses. And those you can really easily stack or set side by side. If you're interested in this kind of thing, just Google tiny house. And you will see way more pictures than you could possibly imagine. And get a lot of ideas. So do your own research and figure out for yourself what you like best.
we have students interested in, would you be able to hook it up to well water?
Oh yeah, absolutely. If I had a well, I would just connect that probably to the tank, and then, you know, the pumps would pump it into the tank, and from the tank it would go to the rest of the house. But yeah, if you have well water, you're awesome. Or if this was in the backyard, I could just keep it hooked up to a hose all the time, so it'd still be city water flushing into that.
So there's just a lot of questions about water, and that probably is because we live in the desert.
Yeah.
How long does the hot water tank last?
So the hot water tank, well, it's on demand. So if I turn on the water, it will keep heating water until it runs out of propane. So there's a propane tank that basically, when the water turns on, it turns on the flame, and that flame heats the water as it comes through. So I could probably, oh man, probably several thousand gallons before the propane tank runs out of propane. But yeah, as opposed to like a 50-gallon hot water heater in your house, where if you use that up, you know, it heats slowly. So you can run out of hot water in your house. You won't run out of hot water with an on-demand unit.
So Jared, what do you do with the stuff from the compost worms?
Well, put it in your flower boxes, or you know, I have a garden in the backyard. Like, really, this should be a garden. I should be growing lettuce or something here. That'd be better. But yeah, you can use it in your plants, or just dump it in the grass. It doesn't really matter. You just it's one way to just take care of your trash without making your trash can all stinky.
Well, we're about out of time, and there's a lot of questions about college, Jared.
Okay.
So kids want to know, why did you go to ASU?
So ASU has the country's first and maybe still only school of sustainability. There's just cutting edge stuff happening there. They are, you know, there's research on solar, water, forestry. I mean, there's research into everything, and the School of Sustainability is what really caught my attention and really matched what my interests were. So that's why I ended up there. It's not the only school around, so depending on what your interests are, you should look around at different schools and see what their focus areas are and see how they solve problems. One of the things I do like about ASU is that it takes a problem-based learning approach in a lot of classes. So it says, you know, instead of saying, here's the book, let's go through chapter by chapter, it says, here's a big problem. How do we solve it? And then you figure out what tools you need to actually solve that problem. And it's a fun way to learn, I think.
How long have you been in college?
So PhD programs are pretty long. And I had my first kid in my first semester of the program. So I'm in my 5th year of graduate school, and I've already had 4 years of college. So that's 9 years of school after high school, which I understand is not for everybody, but I really enjoy school, and yeah.
And I'm going to take our the last question and kind of take a bunch of questions that I've read from the chat room, and we have people who are really interested in why you're doing this, and do you see it being able to solve other problems? Even somebody asked, even bigger things like cancer. How can living sustainably solve, you know, bigger world problems? Okay.
Well, for one, there's an approach to sustainability science that I think can be used to solve any problem. And it's a little different than the scientific method, and I probably don't have time to go into it now. But it's looking at the problem, seeing how it's connected to everything else, and really trying to solve the problem, not just solving the effects. So, for example, you know, I might be malnourished, and so I'm sick. Well, instead of giving me a vitamin, I need to figure out why I'm malnourished, and it might be because I don't have enough money to buy the right food, or I'm not eating healthy. And so really getting at the root of the problem is a sustainability approach that can solve a multitude of problems out there. Living sustainably, I think, can help prevent a lot of problems. So I bike 2.5 miles to the light rail. That keeps me a little bit healthier than I might be otherwise if I was only driving everywhere. You know, we try to eat a lot of produce, a lot of fruits and vegetables, because it's a more sustainable diet, but it's also a healthier diet. And so I think that is going to prevent a lot of problems. And if everybody was living this way, we would have less air pollution, which would then mean you know, fewer lung problems for, you know, asthma sufferers in Arizona. So out here we have bad air quality days that we have to, you know, watch out. If you have breathing problems, you have to maybe not go outside those days. If we were all living sustainably, that wouldn't be a problem.
All right.
Hope
Well,
that covers
Jared,
it.
thank you. That
Yes.
was amazing. And teachers and classes, I hope you enjoyed our first STEM Pro Live. Teachers, I'm going to send you a real quick email because we want to hear from you, because this is something we would like to offer again and give your kids a lot of other experiences with people like Jared who are solving real world problems. So thank you for tuning in and have a great day.